Welcome, everybody, to another wonderful episode of US Law Live, the official US Law podcast. I am Michael Judy of the Dysart Taylor firm in Kansas City, Missouri, flying solo today, but am honored to have a guest that needs no introduction, one of the founding members of US Law, Mr. Mark Solheim from Larson King in Minnesota. Hello, Mark. How are you?
Good afternoon, Michael. I'm well, thank you.
Yeah. Well, as many of our listeners know, and as you're well aware of, we are, and by we, I mean US Law, is celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. And I'm just honored to be talking with you because you were one of the original founders of US Law 25 years ago.
Yeah, it was really fun. Thanks for inviting me. It was really fun to reflect on the journey that this bunch of hardworking, goal-orientated lawyers had and where we are from the very beginning up until today.
So walk me through and walk our listeners through how this started. What was the genesis? What went into the foundation of US law, either at that first meeting or leading up to that first meeting to get this idea off the ground?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I have to chuckle a little bit because when you call me a founder, I really wasn't the vision behind this organization, but a good friend of mine at the Amundsen Davis firm called me and said, "Hey, there's a group of lawyers his firm and the Carr Allison firm, and they were getting together to discuss the formation of a law firm network, and it was as basic as what is a law firm network." And so once he walked through that with me, I said, "Well, you promised me dinner in downtown Chicago, so I'm in." So I went and I participated. And of course, the Amundsen Davis firm hosted the meeting. We had Carr Allison there through Charles, which were truly the driving forces of getting this organization started. And they started to talk, there's only four or five of us at the table, and they were talking about how they wanted to make this organization special. And I'm really proud to say that even 25 years later, those same fundamentals still remain a core belief or core value of our organization. And so it was really fun to see how they created the organization, and it's still continuing on today. Of course, one of the things that was really important to the founders, and I was at the table, but I don't consider myself one of the founders, I didn't have the vision, was that they really wanted continuing education for clients and in-house lawyers and adjusters and claims personnel to be focused not on the classic trial lawyer, how to take a deposition, try a case, but they wanted to focus on client-centric topics that the clients could get engaged. And that was a really core belief. And still to this day, I marvel listening in some of the presentations how we have lawyers and clients up in front that are leading the discussion. But oftentimes those discussions just take on a life of their own where clients in the audience themselves end up having a discussion amongst themselves, trying to talk about best practices and how to help each other lead their teams back at their employment. And so I think that was an important fundamental that still remains today.
And did you find from the client standpoint that there was some hesitance or some skepticism about changing the approach to these networks going from, all right, we're going to present to you for 60 minutes or whatever else about trial practice, et cetera, to more of the model we have today that's really grown of we want to hear from you and we want you to lead the discussion?
It was really interesting when I did check in with one client in particular because I was planning one of the seminars back in the early years. Something that she said to me has always stuck with me. And she said, "Well, thank you for asking about client-centric topics for your seminar. Because, Mark, you don't really realize that litigation that you and I do together is very little of what I do in an average day. Yes, I work with outside counsel on strategy and discovery responses and evaluating cases, but I spend the majority of my day counseling my internal clients. And so it was welcomed by nearly everyone that, we told them that we wanted it to be client centric. And I think that's what got our initial momentum started, because these clients wanted to come to a place where they were protected, that they could talk and talk about challenges that they all had that were unique to in-house and claims personnel, and they could use that and rely on each other for that experience and those best practices.
And do you feel, I'm assuming you'd agree with this, that being in an organization like this makes you a better lawyer, not necessarily in terms of how to try a case, how to examine a witness, how to prepare an expert, but to really dig in on what's important to the client, and to your point that managing the litigation versus managing their client may only be 10% of the work.
Yeah, and I think it's good for the lawyers to appreciate that the what limited role litigation has in their clients' lives, and for the clients to appreciate the challenge that we're having as outside counsel and how to support them. So I think the format is a win-win for outside counsel and the in-house personnel.
So you have those initial meetings in Chicago. You have a discussion about, ideas and, what the vision is going to be. And then I guess what comes next? How did you guys take that initial discussion about your vision to launching an organization that is now 25 years strong and still growing?
Well, first of all, we had the good judgment to interview Roger Yaffe, and uh, Roger, since his initial hiring through today, has been our common denominator. Leaders come and go. Now we have a new leader every year, which I think is a wonderful idea to bring new ideas and fresh perspective. But one thing that's remained constant is Roger. But in those early days, and again, the Carr Allison and Amundsen Davis lawyers really drove this home. I can't remember how often we met, whether it was weekly or biweekly, but they made clear that if we were going to be part of this organization, that we needed to be on those 7:30 a.m. calls, and we needed to be prepared, because we had a big task of filling out the country's map, and had to recruit what we thought were the best lawyers across the country. And I still believe that we were successful in doing that. So a lot of it was finding members that were like-minded, that shared those values, that wanted to belong to an organization that was based on friendships first, and that the business would follow second. And when we did that, we obviously turned to our friends that we had across the country. And I had been active in DRI for many years at that point. And so, of course, naturally, I turned to some of my friends like Jeff O'Hara at Connell Foley, and Chris Torrens, who was at one of our sponsors, longtime sponsors, SEA. And we put together names, and it was really a game of tag. So I got tagged and invited to come to Chicago, but in turn, then I asked others to help me recruit, particularly in areas of the country where I wasn't familiar. And so what happened was we ended up using our contacts through many big organizations like FDCC, IDC, and DRI. And turns out our recruiting was really successful. At one point, I think we had 3 different DRI presidents that were members. We had Matt Carnes, Mark Williams, and of course, our longtime colleague Cheryl Williams out of Seattle at Williams Kastner. And so, in addition to that, we had Don Miles, who was the president of FDCC in Arizona. And so, as that momentum started, we had critical mass, and it was really a game of tag. We'd bring in folks that we recognized as good friends and great trial lawyers, and then we asked them to help in the recruiting. But that recruiting didn't happen overnight. It was a big undertaking, but look at it now. And so it was all worthwhile. And what I look at in that membership is the retention. And you can look at those OGs, the original members that continue to stay as active firms in the organization. And I think that speaks volumes about what kind of organization we are.
Yeah, and something you said there struck me that when you were talking about the game of tag is you mentioned a good friend or a good relationship before you mentioned a good lawyer. And everybody that you mentioned obviously is a great lawyer, very talented, giants in the industry, but you mentioned relationships first. And I think that's important. Is something we've woven through and all the folks we've been talking about is the US law is built on those relationships. And was that something that was intentional from the outset, I assume?
It was very intentional. It brings me back to that first meeting at Amundsen Davis, where at the table they were talking about other networks that were already in existence and how the feel of those organizations where they had name tags in big bold letters that said client, and you had lawyers walking around with their head down searching out the word client and trying to engage these people. And it was important to the founders of this organization to have nothing like that. And I think that holds true still to this day, that we want to come there, we want to have a quality event with high quality continuing education, but it needs to be based on a deep connection among each other. And that starts with the members, who we can't forget are funding this entire organization. And so the financial commitment of the law firms, um, coupled with the friendships that have been formed, and I listened to your podcast with Tom Oliver just a month or so ago, and where he talked about all of those friendships that will survive our practice of law. That we have deep friendships. And it was really important to the founders that if you had that good fundamental base of trust and respect, that the businesses will be kind of a secondary benefit of the organization. And it's held true.
Yeah. And so you talked about the vision and then hiring Roger, getting somebody that can help keep everything together, be a driving force moving forward, the relationships. How long was it, and was there a moment when you went from, boy, this is a huge undertaking, to we've got some traction, we've got something really special, we've quote unquote made it?
Well, that first meeting was really special down in Naples, and it was just a small group, and none of us knew what was going to come of it. But when we recruited the Phoenix firm, and we had, I think, a turning point. We had the ability of Ed Hockley, a very well-known NFL referee, to join our ranks. And as you'll probably remember, Michael, we had the Hockley 10-minute drills. And that was a different approach to continuing education at the time. It was 10 minutes. It was moderated by Ed with a whistle and a uniform,
Right.
and it was
Yep.
done in a fun-loving way. And the whole purpose was, if you have a point to make, you should be able to make it in 10 minutes. And we can dispense with the 45-minute lecture. That really helped our brand because jurors were able, or I'm sorry, the clients and the lawyers were able to come to those sessions and take something away. We live in a fast-paced world, and it was a quick hit best practice. And I really think that that's what separated us from the pack. And we started to get the talk among the alphabet soup organizations that we all know and all of our firms belong to, and really developed and solidified our brand.
Right, right. Looking back, over 25 years with the benefit of hindsight, is there, and this is going to be a two-part question. One, is there something that, the organization is doing, or you said, yep, I always knew it was going to be this. And then the flip side of that, is there something within the organization where this is even better than I could have ever imagined or ever expected, looking back 25 years, looking now forward ahead 25 years?
Well, the challenge is, what we tried to get such big critical momentum, and we were so successful that those seminars became, quite frankly, overwhelming. And so we moved away from having one seminar to two seminars, and now the two seminars were too big, and so we're transitioning to more of a practice-based or practice group focus. The common denominator in that is, first of all, the leadership of Roger Yaffe, but second of all, the organization's ability to react and be nimble and reinvent itself. Oftentimes organizations look at, this is the way we've always done it. And if you look back at the US Law organization, you can see that we've tried things. We haven't done everything great. We've had some successes, a lot of success, but there's some things that we've tried and it just didn't work out. But the ability to react and change is really a strength of the organization. If I looked back at, the evolution of the organization to your second part of your question, in those first years, we were trying to get started. We were trying to recruit. It took a lot of time to fill out the map, so to speak. And then that middle phase or that tier of time where Tom Oliver and Lou Bricker and Brad Wright really took over and developed structure within the organization, really gave us the critical momentum at that point. Then, we're all aging, and now I see a new generation of leaders just emerging with enthusiasm and energy, like you, Michael, and your colleagues. So I have a tremendous amount of confidence that this organization will succeed for generations to come because of those fundamentals.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think one of the things that's made U.S. law so special for me, and I know others that are similarly situated, is you get some organizations where folks who founded it and have been really involved do have a hard time looking to that next group and looking to them for ideas. And I think, again, going back to the relationships and the vision is something that, the folks that were so instrumental in founding the organization have really strived for, that it's not an organization that's just for, a select group of people. It's you want to build those relationships so that organization and the network keeps growing forward. So, I mean, I just could not thank you all enough for, your role in that. And just, it takes a special breed of person to be that open-minded for that next generation.
Yeah, and one of the fundamentals that we talked about early on is anyone that wanted a leadership role that could roll up their sleeves and dig in and help out had a seat at the table. Now, organizations are filled with politics, and we know all of that. I think US law is relatively immune from that because of that culture of anyone who's willing to dig in and help out and volunteer has a spot at the table. And that was true 25 years ago, and it's true today.
Yeah. And is there, again, I know this is a long history to kind of look down, but is there a particular moment or a conversation or a memory that sticks out to you about that captures the spirit of the organization, or that light bulb clicked and yes, this is the moment. This is what everything is all about.
We've had tragedy. We've lost friends, and I think for me it was the emotional connection that in life tragedy happens, and no one is immune from it. And when I look at the grit of the organization, I look at those dark times and how our friends, our colleagues responded in supporting each other. And unfortunately, we've had some dark times in the organization. We've lost members. People have gotten ill. And the manner in which that the organization and membership responded with support, including for me, and how I've in turn supported my friends in times of need, I think just speaks volumes about the close connection we all have with each other.
Yeah. And that again, it's a common theme is the relationships and leaning on each other and when times are hard, and also celebrating each other when times are good, and celebrating each other's successes. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really poignant.
Yeah, and I think just last month when you were talking to Tom Oliver of Carr Allison, and he's talking about, inviting friends to his children's wedding. Though, and I focused on the dark side of it, but I think your point is well taken. We celebrated in the good times and bad.
Yeah, yeah. So where do you see the organization going over the next 5, 10, 15, 25 years? What gives you hope about the organization?
Well, I hope that we will continue to recognize new leadership like yourself and your colleagues, Michael, to give you the opportunity to lead. And that doesn't mean that the old guard needs to go away. I think one of the things that's unique about an organization like ours is once you get through leadership in any professional organization, the former leaders tend to just drift away. That isn't the case with US law. When you look at the leadership from practice groups to the officers of the organization, to a fault, everyone is remains active in the organization, and I think that's good. And so I'm confident in the future that innovation and the friendships and the fundamentals will continue to cause it to probably grow and continue to innovate as the
Yeah.
world changes, including with those two words, AI, and how rapidly
Yeah.
evolving this practice of law may be for all of us.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember coming out of law school and, Westlaw was the fancy new thing is, oh, look at this computerized research. And now it's, hey, AI can do all of the research for you and write a brief and, everything else. It's just crazy how quickly things change.
Yeah, I've said this before, though, that, of our firms, everyone in the organization belongs to DRI, ABA, RIMS, IADC, ADTA, FDCC, PLAC. I could go on for a long time, all the alphabet soups. But for me, I'm really proud to say that of all of the organizations that allow someone to jump in right away, be engaged, not having to wait years to be in leadership positions, and to provide the most meaningful experience based on friendship with business to follow. US law, hands down, is still the number one investment for any marketing dollar, at least from my perspective.
Could not agree more. And one of the, things that those marketing dollars go towards is it's not just great content, but we go to a lot of really great places. What has been your favorite destination that US Law has taken you to? Whether it's a
Well,
conference, a board retreat, whatever the case may be.
I'm smirking because one of the things that hasn't been followed was some of the organizations that were competing networks got over the top, and it became incredibly expensive to attend a conference. And those founders wanted it to be economically reasonable, and I think that we've accomplished that despite going to some really nice places. You
I
know,
agree. Yeah.
and for me, looking back on it, the locations are one thing. You name a garden spot in the country, and we've been there. Um, but for me, some of the most impactful moments were those keynote speakers that the then current chairperson with Roger's assistance had identified. And, the firefighter that responded to the 9/11 disaster, there wasn't a dry eye in that room. And to 50 things that I need to do before I die. I can't remember his name now, but every keynote speaker, I think that the organization has invested in and paid to bring in and both teach us and at the same time entertain us. I think that has been a signature of the organization.
Yeah. And with the last couple of minutes we have here, what advice would you give to somebody who is either attending their first U.S. Law conference or looking to get more involved, based on your experiences, how you've seen the network grow and change and adapt? Just what parting piece of advice would you give to those folks that want to get more involved and work the network?
Well, that's simple because I preach it every day, and that is um, be bold, walk up to people that you don't know, knowing that it is a culture of embracement. They want people to be involved. And so you will be embraced by going out on a limb and introducing yourself. I guarantee you that you'll find something in common with whomever you meet. Now, the other part is be a good listener. Um, Come to the organization and listen and remember. And if I know that if I read, Michael, that you're the managing director of Dysart Taylor, I'm going to mention that the next time that I see you and congratulate you and thank you for your leadership within your own firm. And I just think it's just human nature for people to be good listeners and to connect with others. And as soon as you have that memory of your family and your job and what you love to do and you can talk about it, it just makes conversation flow and it's not so rehearsed at that point. So I would say volunteer, uh, get out of your comfort zone and introduce yourself to people that you don't know, knowing that that will be fully embraced. And finally, and most importantly, be a good listener. And because that's what friends are, right? If you're not a good listener, you're not a good friend. But if you're a good listener and you retain that information, it'll serve you well in life and in U.S. law.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I really do appreciate, the time you've given us, but more importantly, for your dedication, your leadership, your boldness, and your listening within the organization. And I can, give personal testimony to going to these events and being nervous, the first couple about walking up to folks like yourself whose names you hear all over the place. And you're right. I mean, walk up, hey, I'm, Michael Judy from Kansas. Hey, how are you? How are the Chiefs? How are the Royals? I know somebody from Kansas City. Oh, I know this person in your firm. I mean, it's been true leadership, not only in deed but by example. So again, thank you for everything that you've done. The network is, in debt to you, and and part of how our network is set up for the future is based on the foundation that you've laid. So again, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Michael. We won't have it any other way, and I can't wait to see what you and your contemporaries do with the organization. I know that we're expecting big things, big innovation,
Yeah.
and
Well,
don't
well,
forget
thank
about us.
we certainly will not. I can promise you that. But again, Mark, really thank you for your time, and thanks to everybody out in the U.S. Law Network for listening to another episode of U.S. Law Live, U.S. Law's official podcast.